Morning, everybody. Caleb Calhoun here with Off the Hook Sports. Flying solo today. Sorry, we were off for the past couple of days. Dave Hooker is out of town this week. He's in Los Angeles. We wish him the best. He's been working really hard. He deserves a bit of a vacation. We will do the next couple of shows today and tomorrow. I'm definitely going to do it on my own today. I can't speak for tomorrow, but we will definitely have a show tomorrow. We're going to hope to have Fred White on tomorrow. I'll give you guys more details on that later. I can tell you we will have Josh Ward this afternoon at 10:25. We're going to have him in the second block, so please tune in with that. Hope you guys are all doing well. This has been, just bear with us for the next couple of days. It'll be back to normal starting on Monday. So wanted to get right into it. Wanted to talk a little bit about a few things we're going to hit today. We're going to hit Tennessee football season ticket sales 2 days until the spring game. We've got Caleb Jaru out covering spring practice for us again today. Also, we've got some stories on Off the Hook Sports that bag a couple of questions that we want to talk about, mostly dealing with Brew McCoy and Dylan Sampson, a couple of potential breakout stars. And we're also going to talk about the Big Ten's new commissioner and what that means for the SEC going forward. So please hit that like and subscribe button if you can. We greatly appreciate it. We're bringing more people into the fold. Obviously, it's going to be a little bit tricky the next couple of days, but we're going to do our best. So please bear with us. I hope you guys are all doing okay. Let's dive right in. We are a little bit late, obviously. This news broke about 2 days ago, but as you guys are aware, Tennessee football has crossed the 70,000 season ticket sale threshold. They crossed a 70,000 season ticket sale threshold. That shatters their goal of 61,000. Good morning, Smoky Mountain Red to you. Their goal was initially 61,000. The 70,000 ticket threshold, guys, was supposed to happen in 2026. They did it in 2023. This is part of a long-term initiative, by the way, to try to raise, I believe, $500 million. Hence the reason they're charging for the spring game. This is going to become more and more of a big deal because NIL money, guys, I got to say, donor money is going to start going to luring players and recruits to the school, which means less money for things in the athletic budget. So this is a big deal. This says a lot about the football program and what's happening right now. They have roughly, I believe, don't quote me on this, about 300 season tickets available. Yes, I did not lie. I did not make that up. About 300 left. 70,000 sold for the year for a 100,000 seat stadium. It's hard to emphasize what that says about the job Josh Heupel's done entering his third year. Remember, when Tennessee football hired Josh Heupel, this program, I know it's a broken record, but we have to go back to it. It was a dumpster fire. I mean, as much of a dumpster fire as any major program could be. The wheels had come off the program long before that for the last 10 years. Jeremy Pruitt, entering his third year, was not going to hit 70,000 season ticket sales, to be fair, because that was the COVID year, his third year. Butch Jones, though, Derek Dooley, nobody was high on these guys to get 70,000 season ticket sales. And this makes something very clear. It's time to go ahead and say it, that I don't think anybody appreciates the magnitude of what I'm about to say. Tennessee football's not just coming back, it's back. And I know that's a phrase that we've probably heard for a while the past year or so, but we have to compare that to previous coaches that had high moments in the post-Philip Fulmer era. Lane Kiffin, there were some high moments. The almost win against Alabama, the blowout win over South Carolina with the black jerseys. There was a huge belief that Tennessee was going to be back in a year under Lane Kiffin. But the hope was that they were going to be back. Now, I don't know what the sales for tickets would have looked like in 2010 had he stayed. But obviously, that's a moot point. He left after a year. There was never a feeling that Tennessee was even on the verge of coming back under Derek Dooley during all 3 years. Dave and I have had quite a few debates about that. I know he's a lot harder on Derek Dooley than I am. I think Derek Dooley made a lot of mistakes. I'm not here to defend that, but I also think Derek Dooley took over a darn near impossible situation. So I give him a bit of a break for that. But regardless, you never felt Tennessee was fully... You didn't even see a sign that Tennessee was on the horizon with Derek Dooley. Now, with Butch Jones, people don't want to admit this now, and Butch Jones is worthy of every bit of criticism that he gets. But to be fair to Butch Jones, you did get the sense Tennessee was on the verge of coming back under him. Sure, they went 5-7 in 2013. But they had a top 5 recruiting class in 2014, went 7-6 that year, and then a top 5 recruiting class in 2015. That's why they started 2015 in the top 25, his third year. They started 2016 in the top 10 because they lived up to what they were supposed to do in 2015, going 9-4. But you still didn't know for sure if they were you didn't know if 9 wins was Butch Jones' ceiling or not, or if he could do something better, 10, 11, 12, 13. They did start 5-0 in 2016. The Dobbs-Nail Booth game to come back to beat Florida and erase a 12-game losing streak, 11-game losing streak in the series and get to the top 10. But then the wheels fell off, and it became pretty clear Butch Jones was never going to be more than a 9-win coach at Tennessee. Jeremy Pruitt, on the other hand, went 5-7 his first year in 2018. 2019, he started 0-2, fell to 1-4 and 2-5. But we forget that was a really strong finish he had to the season. Tennessee had a great run to end the year. They beat 3 bowl teams in Mississippi State and then Kentucky and Missouri on the road. Actually, scratch that 4 because they also beat UAB, who also went to a bowl. Nobody significant, but those weren't bad wins. And then they went and beat Indiana in the Tax Slayer Bowl to finish 8-5. There was a good bit of hype behind Tennessee entering 2020. I'm going to be honest. They also had a top 10 class. We don't know what the sales would have been had Jeremy Pruitt, had COVID not hit. But I got to be honest, I don't think that the hype would have been nearly the same. Because all of those years were the hope that Tennessee was going to get to where they were last year under Josh Heupel. Nobody even expected that during those years when they were the hopeful years, the third year. And no one expected the second year that they had under Josh Heupel last year. An 11-2 finish, an 11-2 season, a top 10 finish, a number 6 ranking. Should have been number 5 ahead of Alabama in both polls, having beaten Florida and Alabama both in the same year for the first time since 2003. Since 2004. I apologize. Having beaten Alabama alone for the first time since 2007. Nobody saw that coming. And finishing number 6 should have been number 5, being number 1 in the college football playoff. It's easy to see where these season ticket sales were coming from. Travis reports I really pulled for Pruitt. He put that on the message board, but man, Heupel is him. Yeah, I'm with you, Travis. I actually kind of rooted for Pruitt too. I thought he really had things going the right way after that 2019 year. I was one of the people actually defending him after the Georgia State and BYU loss. I take the full L on that. I was totally wrong. I think what really stands out is that 2020 Tennessee had Cade Mays, Trey Smith, and Darnell Wright on the offensive line. Cade Mays is in the NFL. Trey Smith is now the starting guard anchoring a team that just won the Super Bowl. And Darnell Wright is arguably the best draft prospect for Tennessee football on the offensive line in 20 years. So the fact that they couldn't do more with that was pretty embarrassing. But this is a huge deal. Tennessee being able to sell 70,000 tickets. It's really hard to overstate that, guys. This is a huge, huge deal. Neyland Stadium is going to be insane this fall. There's been a 96% renewal rate for season tickets and 9,000 new season tickets sold since last year, in case you guys are wondering. So the hype was already there, by the way. Heading into Josh Heupel's second year was where the hype was heading into Jeremy Pruitt's and Butch Jones' third years. John Hill says solo today. Yes, I am Han Solo today, just to throw that out there. I'm flying solo today. Dave is in Los Angeles for the week. But yes, Josh Heupel, one big difference I think that stands out is Josh Heupel went 7-6 his first year. The other coaches went 5-7 and then hit that 7-6, 8-5 range their second year. So Josh Heupel's a year ahead of schedule. And then his second year, what we thought was going to be the third year for other coaches, exceeded what even we hoped for the third year of coaches. That's where you get these season tickets. So please hit that thumbs up, that like and subscribe button. We greatly appreciate it. We are going to get to today's tough question in a minute. I'm putting the poll out right now. It's going to be an intriguing one. With the spring game 2 days away, we've got a couple of intriguing athletes to talk about that we've written a good bit about. So I'm sorry, guys, just for the record, I don't have the sound effects that Dave has, so I can't do all of that. I just bring you today's tough question. But before we get going, again, please hit that like and subscribe button. We greatly appreciate it. We're doing a lot of fun things. We'll be back to normal next Monday. We're going to have Josh Ward on the show in about 10 minutes. But before we get to all of that, let's go ahead and dive into today's tough question, brought to you by Craven Wings. They give you great wings, never frozen, always fresh, Try the Fantastic Sauce 87, named for our own Jacob Warren. All right, so today's tough question, and I just put the poll out on Twitter if you guys want to check it out and vote. We have 2 stories up. Even though he's on vacation, Dave, in his rock star style, managed to write 2 stories about 2 standout players for Tennessee football right now. They were both newcomers last year, but in different ways. One was a newcomer, one was a transfer. The newcomer is Brew McCoy. The freshman was Dylan Sampson. The transfer was Brew McCoy. Today's tough question is, who will be a bigger explosive star this year? Brew McCoy or Dylan Sampson? Now, Brew McCoy, many scouts say, is probably the best pro prospect for Tennessee football on offense this year. On top of that, Tennessee football just had a Biletnikoff Award winner. We talk all the time about the way Josh Heupel's system benefits quarterbacks. We don't talk a lot about how much more it benefits receivers. 2 separate 1,000-yard receivers the past 2 years, Cedric Tillman and Jalen Hyatt. Both are about to be NFL draft picks. Brew McCoy could be that next guy this year. Heck, last year, he caught 52 passes for 667 yards, and that was his first year with Tennessee. So there's a lot of potential. However, as Dave reports, Dylan Sampson has been explosive this spring. It's been absolutely impossible to ignore just how big of a deal Dylan Sampson has been in the spring. The coaches can't hide it. The running backs coach, Jerry Mack, has been unable to hide it. Josh Heupel's been unable to hide it. It's beyond clear that the only reason Dylan Sampson did not see more action last year was that he had struggled to pick up some pass protection schemes. We saw that with the LSU game. He gave up a block, allowed Hendon Hooker to get sacked, fumble the ball, but Dylan Sampson showed his athleticism on that same play because he recovered the fumble himself and turned it into a gain of nothing when it should have been about a 10-yard loss. Dylan Sampson is a potential superstar. He's going to be the all-purpose back. He will not be the workhorse back. Jabari Small is going to be the workhorse back. Jalen Wright might split time with Jabari Small as the workhorse back. Maybe Cam Seldon will get some reps there. Khalifa Keith is going to be the power back, assuming he arrives ready to go in the fall. But Dylan Sampson, guys, I think is going to be the all-purpose back. Last year, he had 58 carries for 397 yards and 6 touchdowns, averaging nearly 7 yards a carry. And that was with him being limited because of his inability to pick up pass protection. If he's picked up pass protection, we could be looking at a budding superstar. I think he's going to take Jalen Wright's spot as the all-purpose back. I think that's why the coaches have asked Jalen Wright to put on more pounds to maybe be another feature back alongside Jabari Small. So the question remains, 2 guys who showed flashes last year, expected to play larger roles this year. Who's going to be a bigger breakout star for Tennessee football who hasn't flown under the radar because they were productive last year? Brew McCoy at wideout or Dylan Sampson at running back? I'm going to go ahead and go out on a limb. I'm going to say Dylan Sampson at running back. Now, I know what Josh Heupel's offense has done for Tennessee football receivers the past 2 years, and Brew McCoy is a special case. I think Joe Milton's play, though, is more dependent on the slot and the speedy receivers. We saw that last year with Squirrel White. Squirrel White was Joe Milton's favorite target, balled out. We're going to have Josh Ward on. I'm going to concede to him. I conceded to Dave earlier in the week. I'm pretty sure that Squirrel White I thought Dante Thornton was going to take the slot spot away from Squirrel White. I was dead wrong on that. Doesn't mean Dante Thornton still can't play a huge role. He could play wide out and slot, kind of operating in between those, but looks like Squirrel White's going to be the star there. I think the existence of Squirrel White, provided Brew McCoy stays healthy, you're going to see the ball spread out a lot more evenly this year than you did last year. And I think Squirrel White's going to get the bulk of those catches in the offense with Joe Milton throwing the ball. I also think Tennessee's going to rely more heavily on the run game this year than they did last year. And part of that run game is going to be using the all-purpose backs more because Joe Milton can shoulder some of the load of the feature backs, which Jabari Small and they're hoping Jalen Wright will be. given his size. Taking all that into account, everything's set up for Dylan Sampson to have a massive, explosive season. We're talking maybe, guys, dare we invoke the name, the great Alvin Kamara? I'm just saying, it's possible. Let me go to the message boards real quick and see what you guys think. Smoky Mountain Red says, let me go up. I'm going to actually start with Travis. Travis says Brew, and he also says Brew will be on the field every offensive snap. He's huge and so sure-handed. Travis, that's true. He will be on the field every offensive snap. I think Dylan Sampson's going to touch the ball on a higher percentage of times he's on the field, though, than Brew will when he's on the field. Again, yes, he'll be on the field every offensive snap, whereas you can only put one running back on the field. But this offense is usually a first read anyway. So a receiver being on the field every offensive snap with 4 other receivers or 3 other receivers, if they're not the first read, that's like being on the bench for a running back anyway. So I think, honestly, that's not as important. Remember, Ramel Keaton's still there on the other side, and he played a similar role to what Brew McCoy played last year. So even though I think, again, talking NFL, if I were drafting, if I had to pick one player from Tennessee right now to build my NFL future around, I would pick Brew McCoy, and I wouldn't even question it. His NFL draft potential is through the roof. But in this offense, I actually think it might be Dylan Sampson. John Hill says Brew has to rely on the quarterback. Sampson can bust the gaps and break tackles. That's a great point, John. We still don't know what to expect from Joe Milton this year. Everybody's talking about that Clemson game. I think Clemson played a soft coverage. And also, there were a lot of drives Tennessee didn't score on that game. We're overrating a lot of Milton's play in that game. He converted on some big plays to make sure there were enough drives where they did score, but he still missed on quite a few. So that's a great point by John. And by the way, you could say Dylan Sampson somewhat has to rely on the quarterback because you need Joe Milton's arm and his success through the air to open up the gaps, but you don't necessarily need that with Sampson because Joe Milton's running himself, his ability to run as a power runner at the quarterback position will open up things for Sampson. Smoky Mountain Red says, I want it to be Sampson. I think Brew will be solid no matter what. I could see that. Yeah, I think we kind of know what Tennessee's getting out of Brew McCoy, so we'll have to see where that goes. He says that, Smoky Mountain Red, you also say that I hope Sampson is the guy that comes in when a defense is gassed and he busts a long run. That's what I think is going to happen. I think you're going to see a lot of Jabari Small, Joe Milton running the ball, both of them, wearing down a defense. You're going to see some big plays through the air on a couple of offensive drives, as you always do, and eventually the defense is going to be totally gassed, and that's when you will see Sampson. Probably I see like an opening drive of the third quarter. Hawkhead says, I like Wright, though, a lot. I understand your point, Hawkhead, and I could be totally wrong, and Jalen Wright could still be a major impact player for Tennessee. Heck, he could become the new feature back. He and Jabari Small could both be a big deal together. They definitely alternated time last year, but Jalen Wright does have a lot of speed. So maybe Jalen Wright and Dylan Sampson will be the reason Dylan Sampson doesn't surpass Brew McCoy because they split time. But I'm just not so sure Jalen Wright has what Dylan Sampson has. Smoky Mountain Red says the height difference between Squirrel and Thornton is comical. I agree, Smoky Mountain Red. That's why I thought Dante Thornton was going to be the sure starter because a 6'5" slot guy in Josh Heupel's system, as I keep saying, seemed like Kevin Durant going to Golden State. But Squirrel hasn't given that spot up. He's been balling and looked every bit of what we thought he was at the end of last year. Mr. Jones says if the O-line can keep up the pace and block like they did last year, the running backs will have huge numbers this season. He also says Cam Seldon might be the rookie that has the best year and that there's a deep running back room, as many snaps per game as they have their touches to go around. Mr. Jones, you're right, but sometimes you have a rare athlete and you got to give them the ball more. We're not so sure with Cam Seldon. Dave and I talked about it, and I'm kind of on Dave's side. I think the Cam Seldon story has a little bit more to do with the fact that they're just trying him out because they don't know where to put him yet, and they're a little thin at running back. You don't use running backs too much in the spring. It's not a position that requires a lot of learning outside of pass protection, so it's more important to keep them healthy this time around. So I would just say be cautious with that. I think that Dylan Sampson still could end up getting the bulk of carries in this offense. And by the way, in Josh Heupel's offense, running backs don't need the bulk of carries because if you're the right running back in the right system at the right time, you can get a ton of yards no matter what. Please hit that like and subscribe button. Thanks for tuning in on today's tough question. I'm going to give you guys the results right now. The poll right now, 71% says Brew McCoy, 28% says Dylan Sampson on the polls. So please, again, hit the like and subscribe. In 2 minutes, we're going to take a 2-minute break. When we return, Josh Ward will join us. And we're going to talk a little bit more Tennessee football with the spring game 2 days away. Thanks a lot. We'll be back in 2 minutes, guys.
And Craving Wings South North Shore location, where we've heard people say that you can get the best wings in East Tennessee. Pero ¿quién es este? El número 87, Jacob Warren.
I'll just do 6 of my sauce 87, please.
Imposible, señorita. Dale 6 más. Look at these wings. Perfectas, deliciosas, fantásticas.
Man, I don't know what you're saying, but it sounds awesome. How do you say fresh, never frozen in Spanish?
Frescas, nunca congeladas. Make your way to Craving Wings and get you 6 más.
But what was funny about Cadis, we were a full continuum of care at that time. We had detox, we had inpatient, we had outpatient. So we were doing a lot of the things that we do now. But now we just do them so much better. It's really a simple program, but we're complicated people. I am what I am, and now I got to do something about it.
You can take your life back. Call Cadis today.
Got cataracts? We can fix that. Never miss another moment. With a little help from Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn at cctis.com.
Do you want to own the more that owns every job? Then get to Vassey Lawn and Garden in Cleveland and get you a Toro. I'm David Vassey, here to talk to you about Toro. With a Toro Zero Turn, you'll get more out of every minute and you'll reach the finish line faster. At Vassey's, we like to say, no matter if you're mowing 3 acres a week or 11 lawns a day, homeowners and business owners alike find confidence in equipment they can trust from top to bottom.
Vassey Lawn and Garden, Highway 60 North in Cleveland.
Man alive, it's worth the drive.
Our family has been creating jewelry since 1986, each piece unique with a story all its own. I'm Rick Terry with Rick Terry Jewelry Designs. I'm a jeweler, and I want to be your jeweler. We're grateful that you chose us to be Knoxville's best jeweler. My family and staff look forward to serving you. So please come see us. Kingston Pike and Campbell Station Road in the heart of Farragut and downtown on Gay Street, right next to the Tennessee Theater.
Welcome back to Off the Hook Show, Off the Hook Sports. We got Josh Ward waiting in the background, about to bring him on. Before we do, just want to let you know a portion of the program brought to you by Zool Beer, xulbeer.com. It's the official craft beer of Off the Hook Sports. Great parking downtown, and Zool Beer has worldwide award-winning craft beer. Zool Beer, xulbeer.com. If you're on our audio platform, bring it on Josh now. How's it going, Josh?
Hey, doing well. Great to be with you.
Thanks for coming on. I know it's a little bit tricky today without Dave, but he's got a much needed vacation in LA.
Tricky, but not necessarily worse without Dave. So yeah, we'll have some fun. We have a lot to talk about.
Yes, we definitely do. Josh, I wanted you to jump in. I don't know if you heard the conversation I was having earlier beforehand. Who do you think will be a bigger breakout star this year, Dylan Sampson or Brew McCoy for Tennessee?
I'll say Sampson from a breakout standpoint. I think Brew will have a bigger role and will have a chance to enhance some of his numbers, both up and down the field and then perhaps in the red zone. But I think Dylan Sampson has a chance to go from a guy that would be counted on at times, but really sparingly over his freshman season, to playing an important role within the offense. And he showed what his ability was as a freshman. Think about that Missouri game where he had some big runs in the second half when Missouri's trying to come back and turn it into a football game to close things out toward the fourth quarter. And then Sampson hit a couple of big runs. They had some big plays. They had the long touchdown pass with the trickeration to Jalen Hyatt, and that was it. But Sampson's runs were a big deal there, and you could see his burst, his speed, his playmaking ability within this offense, but he still had a lot to learn. He had trust to earn from Tennessee's coaching staff, and what we've heard during the spring, I think, indicates that he will play a bigger role. So I think he has a chance to break out in terms of his role, numbers that he will put up, big yardage plays, and scoring for Tennessee. So Sampson is a player to watch absolutely within this offense. Brew McCoy can kind of help lead the group of receivers, but I don't know that he'll break out much greater than what he was able to do last year.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. I was thinking that Brew probably is a better, I guess, if you were to say NFL prospect, is probably the best on the offense. But it just seems like the system allows for Sampson to pick up a lot more yards. Dare we say, dare we invoke the name Alvin Kamara with him?
Yeah, I'm always hesitant because of how special Alvin is as a talent, but Sampson has the ability to, I think, change games with his playmaking ability. There are several uh, big play guys in this offense. Squirrel White's going to have that opportunity. Dante Thornton is a newcomer, a transfer from Oregon, can do that. And then Dylan Sampson can hit the home run. I just, is he going to have a Texas A&M game this season as Alvin did in 2016? That's a big ask. Also, Jabari Small and Jalen Wright are not going to be counted out in the offense, and somebody else, Cameron Seldon could play a role at running back. Deshaun Bishop has gotten a lot of spring attention, but I don't know that that's going to translate to the field this fall for him as a true freshman. But Sampson will play an important role, and his playmaking ability, and we'll see if he's involved in the passing game, because that's what I think about with Alvin. Alvin was such a good receiver and has been for the New Orleans Saints. But in terms of quickness, burst of speed, explosive playmaking ability, Sampson ranks very high on the list of skill players in this offense for Tennessee.
Got a lot of questions on the message board about, looks like one of the aspects of the debate is about returning kicks. Do you think Dylan Sampson might be the kickoff returner for Tennessee this year?
He could be in that role. We saw that from the orange and white game. I think Seldon is a player that should have an opportunity in that role. He's been limited this spring, but Seldon is a player, Cameron Seldon, a true freshman who could play running back or receiver on offense, and with his speed would be a natural fit as a kick return guy. But Sampson absolutely should get some consideration there. D. Williams can be an option, but he's the punt returner. Do you want him doing both? That's something the coaching staff would have to figure out. But Sampson, to me, would want to be he would be one of the top 2 to 3 contenders for that role if I'm Tennessee's coaching staff.
Seems to me like there's a lot of more even than last year or the year before. It seems like they're going all in a little more on speed this year. Between, you talked about Dylan Sampson, and we both agree. I think I've come to your side. I've taken the L. Looks like Squirrel White's going to be the slot guy over Dante Thornton based on what we've seen in the spring. So it seems like they're going a lot more on speed this year than in the past.
Yeah, and Thornton has really good speed. He's a deep threat, averaged 21.5 yards per catch at Oregon. He's a bigger guy, obviously, at 6'5" compared to Squirrel White, who's one of the smaller guys that will be out there. But with Squirrel, with Sampson, with Seldon coming in, Seldon is just one of those guys where it shows up on tape and you do wonder about the competition, but then you look at him out on the track as well and you can realize, okay, he can run. And at that size, you just don't find that very often. So I think on both sides of the ball, on offense and then also in the secondary, and a linebacker, somebody like Arion Carter in this offense, and Jalen Smith coming in at linebacker. They wanted to upgrade the speed across the board. Every coach wants it, but there might be more opportunities to utilize that on the field together this fall, because again, last year there was still a lack of trust in Sampson because of pass protection development, and then Squirrel was still just a freshman who had a lot to learn himself. This year, he'll be more developed. Same with Sampson. Thornton coming in. We'll see Squirrel and Thornton on the field together, I have to imagine, at least this upcoming fall. Brew and Ramel Keaton are not going to be highlighted for their blazing speed compared to these other guys, but Brew is a good athlete, big physical receiver, and Keaton is not a bad one either. So I just think across the board, Tennessee has recruited well, and that includes the transfer portal to upgrade what they needed, and that's more speed. In the SEC, you need as much as you can find.
Yeah, Mr. Jones brings up the great catch Brew had to set up the Alabama win, and also said Travis added best catch of the season in any game. And Mr. Jones also adds he thinks Ramel Keaton will have a good year. And I wanted to bring that up because I know you mentioned him.
Yeah.
Do you think there's an odd man out, or do you think there's enough balls to go around with the yards he put up? Could Keaton be left out with this new rotation?
Yeah, I'd be surprised. He's kind of forgotten in the conversation because especially this time of year, it's so common to talk about who's next or who's the newcomer, which I've talked about a lot here. But don't forget Keaton and how he stepped into a starting role when Cedric Tillman went down last year and produced. When we think about big plays last year, we think about Jalen Hyatt most likely. Tillman has done some of that the last couple of years for sure, not being a blazing speed guy. Keaton's catch down the right sideline against Florida before halftime last season was a huge play for Tennessee. That set up a touchdown throw to McCoy, who made a great play in the end zone. And that turned the game around in Tennessee's direction. They scored before the half, then carried it over into the second half and gave Tennessee a big enough lead to be able to hold on late against Florida. If Keaton doesn't make that catch, it's a different conversation going into half. There's a little more pressure on the Vols in the second half and just a closer margin as the second half plays out for Florida to manage. So that Keaton play and several plays that he made during the season, catch and run ability that he showed. I think Keaton, with that experience and his ability to continue developing, will allow him to play an even bigger role potentially in the offense. It's easy to see a guy and understand what he's been and then kind of assume, okay, that's it for him, and discount his ability to continue to develop. And I think Keaton has a chance to be that. He knows that Squirrel is going to be an exciting player to pay attention to, and he might lead the team in receptions or total yards, but all these guys will play an important role. Unless there's injury, there won't be a deep rotation of receivers. Pretty confident there based on what we've seen the last couple of years. But the top four, I think, are in no particular order: McCoy, Keaton, Squirrel, and Dante Thornton.
Yeah, and adding on to that, we have a question from Mr. Jones. What about Nathan Leacock? Do you think he could somehow work his way into the rotation? I've heard some things about him this spring, but I don't know if you know any more.
Yeah, I think they're really excited about Laycock, who is a well-thought-of recruit. He surged during his senior season in high school and improved in recruiting rankings. On3 moved him up into maybe the top 50 in the 40s, I believe. And they were really high on what he did and will be at Tennessee. But this would be an example of where we sometimes need to pump the brakes as well on freshman expectations when we talk about Tennessee's group of receivers and how short they've been in the rotation in the past. One reason that Walker Merrill, Jimmy Holiday, and Jimmy Callaway left is because it was difficult to get on the field because they didn't go that deep at receiver. And Keaton didn't play much until Tillman went out. And then Tillman went out and it became Keaton's opportunity. So I wouldn't rule out seeing Laycock play an important role. I'm just skeptical knowing the experience they have ahead of him and how short the rotation has been the last two seasons in this offense. But the future for Laycock, I think, is very bright.
This is Josh Ward of the Sports Animal joining us right now. Josh, let's talk about the spring game a little bit. 2 days away. What can we expect? What should we look for when watching the spring game? Because I know Heupel, he's pretty cagey on what he tries to reveal to the public.
Yeah, sure. As most coaches are, and I get it at this point, I think you look at individual players and you might look at connections, like see what Joe Milton and Nico are able to do connecting with receivers. But making too much of overall team performance is something that we have to be careful about in projecting what it means for the upcoming fall. Let's see who is available, who's held out. When Cooper Mays was not out there for the first scrimmage a couple of weeks ago, I immediately was hesitant to talk too much about what it meant for offensive issues or the defensive impact because Cooper is so important at center for Tennessee, and they're still trying to figure out right tackle. But if you see some receivers who we expect to play this fall make some plays, that's a good indication. Or even a newcomer, a freshman, with so many freshmen who are on campus, you'll be able to see at least some of that physical ability that they have. It may not say exactly what their role will be, but if Arion Carter goes out there and makes some plays, I think that is a reminder of his ability and how he might be able to help either right away this fall or at some point. I think he can be a high-impact special teams player. So don't make too much of it for what it will say about the win-loss record or even what starting units will be, depending on who else is or is not out there. But you can still watch the players individually. This is the last look at football we get for college football, at least for the next 4 months. So I'm not going to tell people, don't make anything of it. I don't think that is right at all. Just don't make too much of the good or the bad coming out of the game. And there will be some players that make some plays that realistically will not factor into what Tennessee will do this year.
Recapping the whole spring, I remember the first week or so hearing the defense was a little bit ahead of the offense. And I know that traditionally, that's usually what you want to see. Does that rule still apply? And did it apply to Tennessee throughout all of spring practice, the defense being ahead of the offense?
Well, it definitely did after the first scrimmage, but again, that was without Cooper. And within that, we heard the quarterbacks took care of the football, which I thought was important, especially when you have a freshman going through his first scrimmage action like Nico. That would be an easy spot to make some mistakes if the defense is able to get pressure and make some plays. So you can take the good and the bad from either side of that. We'll see this Saturday, depending on what the matchups are. But I have no hesitation in saying that this offense will be just fine this fall. As good as last year, that's an unfair expectation. But one of the best in the SEC, which would turn into one of the best in the country, I have no doubt there. But you can also look within the offense. Right tackle, that's a big deal. Replacing Darnell Wright is a huge task. Replacing him is nearly impossible. Playing well enough to continue succeeding is realistic. Left guard is a big deal. I thought Jerome Carvin was an important player for Tennessee the last couple of seasons, and he is gone. And there is talent to help at left guard. I think, Caleb, last week on the show, we were talking about Addison Nichols. He's a young, talented player who could help at guard or as a backup at center to Cooper Mays. So he would be an individual player to watch out there. Vyson Lang is a newcomer that you can watch out there on the field at the orange and white game. So that would be an example of trying to figure out some of the key pieces that will play a role in what the offense is this fall. But the offense versus the defense, maybe some individual matchups, but I'm more curious on the defensive side of just how some guys look, how Jordan Matthews or Ricky Gibson in the secondary look, or some of those linebackers I mentioned. Plus, some older players like Keenan Peely. He's going to be a high-impact player at linebacker as a transfer from BYU. Same for his former teammate at BYU, now at Tennessee, Gabe Judy-Lawley at corner.
Yeah, I'm putting a lot of money on if I were to bet, I would parlay the idea that Gabe Judy-Lawley and either Jordan Matthews or Ricky Travis will both be starting this year in the secondary.
Yeah, either at the start of the season or as the season goes along. Competition at safety is there, and I'm skeptical that they're going to count on a freshman right away in the secondary, considering the amount of veterans they have coming back. Just coaches, they know what they have with those guys. But if they make mistakes, if they continue to show some of the issues they have the last couple of seasons, and trust is gained by Matthews or Gibson or somebody else. John Slaughter's a guy they've talked about since he arrived. If one of those guys emerges, Christian Conyer, it's a deep group of freshman corners and defensive backs who came in competing to play right away. There are a lot of guys, and not everybody will stay. Somebody could enter the transfer portal after the spring thinking, okay, I might not get my chance. But Danico Slaughter at corner seems like a really good chance to be a starter. Gabe has a chance to be a starter, I think, for sure right away. Warren Burrell's going to have something to say there. Missed a lot of time this past season. Has still been limited coming back, but I imagine he'll compete for a starting spot. But that's the good thing. They have a lot of young, talented players who are legitimately pushing and trying to learn, and having them on campus for the spring semester gives them a more realistic shot of playing. But they have more real competition. They had some last year, but probably just not enough guys that were ready to play. They have more guys that could realistically be ready to play to compete in August.
Speaking of the portal, you brought up, Mr. Jones has a really good question about with the portal about to open again. Do you think Tennessee will try to add another quarterback or somebody at any other position in the next round of the transfer portal?
Yeah, I would think so. I don't think that there will be a ton of activity, but Tennessee has 2 scholarship quarterbacks. So they have to look at the portal and see what might be available. Now, it would not be a player coming in to compete to start right away. That's Joe Milton, and if it's not Milton, it's Nico. And every quarterback that's in the portal will know that. They've had Gaston Moore, who was the backup at the end of last season. So he's a high-quality player who's been a walk-on for Tennessee at that position. But even if they had 3 scholarship quarterbacks, I'd say that's cutting it close considering the history Tennessee has dealt with. So I would look for a quarterback in the portal, but that doesn't mean you're going to find a guy that's highly acclaimed. I think a better spot would be a veteran quarterback who maybe at one point was highly touted, maybe not sure, but a guy who understands what his role would be, but has enough experience to where if you did need him, that you might be able to count on him and have some trust there versus a freshman that you're hoping to develop that maybe is not that highly touted and wouldn't necessarily fit into your future on the field, and also would not be able to help if needed. A veteran who would have a better understanding of what his role would be is what I would be looking for if I'm Josh Heupel.
Wow, you're giving me with that major Keller Christ vibes. Remember with Jeremy Pruitt?
Yeah, you know, and I think there's some value. Like you keep expectations realistic there and what the impact would be. But another example would be a player that once committed to Tennessee. Hunter Johnson was a 5-star quarterback who went to Clemson. Then Trevor Lawrence showed up, and Hunter realizes, wait a minute, this guy is something. So he went to Northwestern. Didn't exactly work out there. Was an older player. Went back to Clemson and understood what his role was when he went there. So somebody like that, and every once in a while, you bring in that kind of player, and he ends up being a lot better than expected. Another example would be Gardner Minshew, who ended up going to Washington State to be the starter. Now he's a backup in the NFL. But once upon a time, he planned to just go to Alabama as a backup quarterback. And, that kind of would be really valuable to a team because you never know if you're going to need him. But just about every team in the SEC needed their backup at some point last season, which means the number 3 guy became the backup, and Tennessee was down to a walk-on in the backup role this past season. So Tennessee fans have too much experience seeing number 2 and sometimes number 3 at quarterback. Josh Dobbs was needed when he came in as a freshman as QB4. 3 guys got hurt, and Josh Dobbs was needed, and that burned his red shirt in 2013. So just having 2 scholarship quarterbacks or 2 guys you can count on, and this is not knowing exactly what Tennessee thinks of Gaston if he were needed, but let's say that they had some trust in him. I would still want another quarterback to add to the roster.
Just before we let you go, we got playing games for the NBA playoffs Friday. Who do you have winning it all, and who are you rooting for to win it all?
Well, I'm a Chicago Bulls fan, so I love the comeback against the Raptors. Zach LaVine was terrific. So, the way the Heat looked, I don't think they're very good right now, and the Bulls have some momentum, obviously being the 10 to win. So I'll take the Bulls to win against the Heat, but that'll probably do it. So I think my NBA champ coming out of the playoffs will be the Milwaukee Bucks. I think Giannis is the best player in the league, and if they're able to stay healthy, last year they would have had a chance to win again, but Middleton's injury cost them. So I'll go Bucks over the Suns from the Western Conference side. And, the Suns, can KD hold up? Chris Paul, older now, and last year's flame out in the playoffs was honestly stunning to me. But they made it to the finals a couple years ago, lost to the Bucks, in fact. So I'll take the same matchup, and I'll take the Bucks again.
All right. Well, I'm a Grizzly fan, but we got Ja Wick, as we say now.
Yeah.
And
yeah. So how do you feel about the Lakers series?
I don't like it. I actually think that Lakers are the hottest team in the NBA right now, and I'm actually really, really nervous about the series, particularly since we don't have Steven Adams in the post. I think Anthony Davis could do some work if he's healthy.
Yeah, healthy Anthony Davis has been dominant. Anthony Davis again. They were sloppy the other night and fortunate to win the game against the Timberwolves. But when they played clean on the offensive end, they are a tough team to beat. And defensively, they can still be really good. They made moves that just changed what this team is. At the beginning of the season, that was a bad basketball team, and they are much better now.
Yes, the Russell Westbrook experiment.
But the Grizzlies get this. They get to play this role of almost not everybody, but a lot of people are going to be picking the Lakers, and they know that. So they get to take on this kind of underdog mindset because of all the attention on LeBron and Anthony Davis. And there's actually been some animosity between those two sides. So it should be a fun series, but Grizzlies have a good chance to win here. They just, to me, they need to do something here. They've talked a lot of trash over the last couple of seasons, and when you're going to do that, you need to go win. So getting knocked out in this first round would be really bad for the image of that franchise.
Oh, I agree. And Ja consistently acts like everybody's against him, but I'm like, Ja, everybody's rooting for you. People want you to be a top 5 star in the league. And
the Grizzlies kind of they did it to themselves. Everybody loved Memphis. I didn't know one person that was like, I don't really like Ja, or I don't really like that Grizzlies team the way they play. Everybody I encountered when we're of course in the state of Tennessee, but thought the Grizzlies were cool and a nice change of pace from LeBron and the stars that we've seen in the league. So that turned this year, and the Grizzlies did it to themselves, in my opinion, but still a good team and should not be counted out.
Yeah, I guess could we say, I don't want to go too hot take here, but are they almost the Tennessee baseball of the NBA?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, comparisons of the amount of talking they've done. Tennessee did make the World Series a couple of years ago, but last year's team came up short, and this year's team, by the way, has everybody targeting Tennessee because of what the team's done the last couple of years. Some of the same players remain, but many of them are different, or at least playing bigger roles now. So there's some similarity. One of the things I've loved is, Dylan Brooks is this villain and he's had his spats with Draymond Green. And there's video from when Dylan Brooks was at Oregon talking about how he looked up to Draymond Green and was a player that, I'm paraphrasing, but either wanted to be like or he looked up to him for sure. And you should. Draymond's a Hall of Famer, title winner, but also instigator. And Dylan has been that to another level. He just hasn't won yet.
Yeah, you always need that enforcer. But you need it, unlike to bring it back to Tennessee, you need him to be more of an enforcer than Uroš Plavšić, meaning you have to rely on them being on the court all the time.
Well, yeah, you have to be careful not to take it too far because it can end up coming back to bite you. Like even Uros playing that role, it was good for Tennessee. He would just take it too far at times, and he did that in the Arizona game earlier in the season. And it was the worst timing when he did it in the FAU game that ended up costing Tennessee the rest of the season. And I'm not saying Uros did, but that it was costly to Tennessee, and all eyes were on him. All eyes will be on the Grizzlies. And by the way, speaking of Draymond, remember the finals in 2016, LeBron knew how to push those buttons of Draymond, got him suspended, baited him, and they'll try to do that against the Grizzlies. So you need those type players, but you also need to be smart about it. Uros was not at times. Vescovi, I think he can be a bit of an instigator. I think Zakai has been an instigator, but they are better at knowing when to do that, when to turn it off, and what their roles are.
Yeah, now that we brought that up, before I let you go, I got to ask you this one last question because Josiah Jordan-James sent out kind of a cryptic tweet yesterday. Just, I didn't know what it meant. I don't know if you saw it, like him signing something. And do you know if there's I know he technically has eligibility left. Who do you think is leaving Tennessee outside of Olivier, who's left, in Tyreek Key, who has to go?
Yeah, so 4 players have the option of returning in terms of eligibility that still exists. Santiago Vescovi, Josiah Jordan-James, Uros, and Olivier. I think it's pretty clear Olivier is not planning to come back to Tennessee. I'd be surprised to see Uros back at Tennessee. I'd be surprised to see Josiah back, or at least an announcement that he's planning to come back, because he's expected to test the NBA waters anyway, and I think that would be his objective right now, is to go ahead and become a pro. That could change, but I'd be surprised if that has already changed in his mind. Vescovi, to me, is the one that's most likely to return. I think he's seriously considering that right now, and I'm a little surprised we haven't had an announcement one way or the other, but I think that's probably coming soon, and I think that there's a good chance Vescovi is coming back. I know he's considering it, so it's on the table for Vescovi for sure.
All right, Josh Ward, thanks again. Thanks for jumping on. I know it was a little bit tricky today, but you were right. We had a lot of fun.
Yeah, fun as always. Thanks a lot, Caleb.
Yeah, thanks. Have a good one. Josh Ward of the Sports Animal. When we come back, we have a little bit more news coming, which is that the Big Ten has a new commissioner. What does that mean for the SEC? Again, please hit that like and subscribe button. We greatly appreciate it. Going back to the message boards real quick, actually, Travis K says, I bet they all come back NIL. That'd be intriguing. Mr. Jones says, I want to see Ja dunk on LeBron. Mr. Jones, I'm a huge Grizzly fan too. I love the Grizzlies. I had season tickets the first year they were in Memphis. But Josh was right. They do a lot of talking for a team that hasn't won a lot. And Ja Morant did not improve on his free throws or his three-point shooting this year. His defense got better. He's much better defensively. But look, I can't put Ja Morant in that top 5 category until I see him go 80% from the free throw line and at least 34% from 3. Those 2 things just have to be consistent before I can put him in my top 5. So it'll be interesting to see. We playoffs officially after the play-in games start on Saturday. When we come back, we will talk about the Big Ten commissioner, the new Big Ten commissioner, and what it means for the SEC. Stick with us 2 minutes.
I know you like the heat. You gotta try my signature sauce 87.
Dude, you know I love you and I love to try your wing sauce, but when it comes to wings, I need them really hot. I hit 105 on the radar gun. I need to be pretty spicy.
Yeah, I know that, man. Look, if sauce 87 isn't enough for you, I guess you can try the Holy Moses or the Grim Reaper.
Now we're talking.
Take it from these Farragut Admirals. When you're craving wings, it's got to be Craven Wings. Visit them online at cravenwings.com.
With all that sun, sand, and salt water, the beach is a very relaxing place. Unless you wear contacts. Ow! Open your eyes to the best the beach has to offer with LASIK vision correction from Campbell Cunningham Laser Center.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
There's your fair.
Before Cadis, I was really heavy into the drug culture. I was selling drugs. I was just constantly in pain. I was missing like a good support system in my life. Cadis has given me everything that I need in order to successfully have a wonderful recovery, in order to have a life that I didn't even know was possible before. And it's not just about me anymore, and I love that. I absolutely love it.
You can take your life back. Call Cadis today.
Our family has been creating one-of-a-kind pieces of jewelry in West Knoxville since 1986. Each piece is a combination of unique processes that bring your idea to life. Every day in our shop, a truly special item with a story all its own is being manufactured in our facility, bringing the history and family sentiment into a whole new generation of life. We're grateful that you chose us to be Knoxville's best jeweler, a title that we value and respect. Because to me, being a jeweler and owning a jewelry store are not the same thing. I'm Rick Terry, I'm a jeweler, and we want to be your jeweler. Kingston Pike and Campbell Station Road in the heart of Farragut, and downtown on Gay Street right next to the Tennessee Theater.
Welcome back to Off the Hook Sports. I am Caleb Calhoun. Dave Hooker is in Los Angeles. Got a new message from Thomas Doe. Dan O'Hurley, Thomas, I think you mean Dan Hurley, the next Tennessee basketball coach to replace Rick Barnes. Doubt it. Tennessee probably had their chance to hire him, but Dan Hurley, if I am not mistaken, is a Jersey kid. The Northeast is his region. He's got a pretty sweet Northeastern gig coaching at UConn. I doubt he wants to go to Knoxville. I'm pretty sure he's comfortable where he is. But look, if Tennessee's going to shoot for the stars, there is that debate. Should they go higher or should they be happy with where they are with Rick Barnes? Because look, they are consistently getting into the NCAA tournament. And the law of averages suggests that if you consistently get in, you get a break and you break through it at least at some point, right? I mean, Tony Bennett was able to do it at Virginia. Most defensive-minded coaches are terrible in the NCAA tournament, but they can always get that one breakthrough if things fall the right way. All right, so I want to move on a little bit. Portions of the program brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Kahn. No contacts, no glasses. You can have LASIK surgery. They have great local vision care. That's Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Kahn. And before we go back into everything for today's show, just want to mention again, thank you guys for bearing with me with Dave Hooker out. This is a little bit new. It's been fun. It's definitely, again, tricky is the word to use. Please hit that like button. Please hit the subscribe button. We greatly appreciate it. We're still growing, doing a lot of exciting things. When Dave gets back here after LA, the spring game will be over. It'll be on Monday. We'll be looking ahead to the NFL draft and former Vols in the draft. And we'll also then start to head into our summer. We've got some great feature stories we're going to start doing. Some great weekend feature stories we're going to start doing, we've been working on. And we can tell you more about that. Dave's got a Celebrate 98 series that he's still working on. So there's a lot of good things happening. All right, so the Big Ten has hired Tony Petitti as commissioner. He's going to replace Kevin Warren. This is the second conference that has really gone out of left field somewhat for its commissioner. I believe it was the Big 12 that first went out of left field, going with Brett Yormark, who worked with Warrock Nation. This is an intriguing hire. For those who don't know, Tony Petitti has spent time he worked with CSTV, responsible for the day-to-day operations, kind of was responsible for it merging and being absorbed into CBS Sports. And now you have the CBS College Sports Network. That was back in 2008. He was head of the MLB Network, which launched in January of 2009. He used to be the chief operating officer of Major League Baseball, taking over for Rob Manfred in that role when Manfred became commissioner And most recently, he was the president of Activision Blizzard. That is a video game holding company. So the Big Ten is going the esports route. Which I think is a little bit shocking, but that's also out of left field. That's also thinking forward to the future because we know esports has been a very trendy thing for a long time. Now, what does this mean for Tennessee? I mean, not Tennessee, the SEC in general. What does this mean for college football? Well, Tony Petitti obviously dealt directly with SEC football when he worked at CBS. He also is highly responsible for nationalizing the sport. For those who don't know the history of college football, the sport really became nationalized in 1998, the year Tennessee won the national championship with the BCS. And Tony Petitti was instrumental in doing that. He was also instrumental in the expanded MLB playoff and the Field of Dreams game. So he's forward-thinking. He thinks about, he's innovative. But is he innovative for the right reasons? And this is why I say that. And that's a weird thing to say. But I don't think the expanded MLB playoff is good for the sport. I'm going to tell you that, guys, that right now. People disagree with me. You can disagree with me all day. I think it was best when it was stuck at 8. The BCS largely worked. But it started the trend of nationalizing college football, which became the 14 playoff, and now is the 12-team playoff. I don't know if that's good for the sport. The sport seemed a lot more exciting back in the early 1990s when your championship, your thrilling season was winning your conference and winning one of the elite bowl games. And yes, you spread the love a little bit. And the national championship was a bonus. The more you nationalize these college sports, the less thrilling a season is unless you win the national title. Now, from a revenue perspective, it's great. So, and that was his job. So you have to give him credit for that. I don't know long-term if it's smart, though, in terms of generating interest with the expanded playoff. Look, we're going to talk about this at another point in time, but the fact of the matter is the expanded playoff is not going to create new Cinderella teams, or it's not going to open the door for more teams to win the national title. What it's really going to do is keep the title in the hands of the elites. Once you went to the college football playoff, it lessened the likelihood of the best team not winning it every year. The 12-team playoff is going to take that even further, guys. I just have to say that. So Tony Petitti is forward-thinking. He doesn't rely on tradition. You give him credit for that. At the same time, you don't know if his philosophies are best for every sport. And that's something we're going to have to find out. Now, I will say this with the Big Ten versus the SEC. Here's my hot take. And this is a kind of a disagreement Dave and I've had, so it's probably unfair for me to bring this up now with Dave not here because he would usually give the other side. The Big Ten has been run better than the SEC for the past 10, 12 years, 14 years. It just has. I'm going to say that. It was Kevin Warren, or maybe it wasn't even Kevin Warren, though. It could have been Jim Delaney. But either way, they've been running it better than the SEC. The SEC just has a better product to sell. The Big Ten has just three schools that you could ever consider in this day and age in college football be national championship programs. Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State. And Michigan and Penn State are to a much lesser degree than Ohio State. Okay, Ohio State's really the only one. The SEC has 6 schools in the conference that have won national championships since the Big Ten's, since any other Big Ten team outside of Ohio State. Those schools are Tennessee, Florida, Georgia, Alabama, Auburn, LSU. Have all won national championships since any Big Ten team outside of Ohio State has won one. Most notably, Tennessee's about to add Oklahoma and Texas. The Big Ten is about to add USC and UCLA. Again, that's 2 more national championships since the Big Ten's most recent champion. You add UCLA, that's 1 more, 2005. A vacated title, I might add. 2004, a vacated title, I might add. So if you factor in the idea that title is vacated, the SEC is about to have 8 teams that officially have a claimed national title more recently than any Big Ten team out of Ohio State, and that is after both conferences expand to 16. The Big Ten still got the $7 billion TV deal, and the SEC got the $3 billion TV deal. Why? SEC negotiated first. They latched themselves onto one network, and the Big Ten shopped themselves around with CBS, Fox, NBC, you name it. They actually willingly got an NBC deal, even though Notre Dame still has that NBC deal. Now, long term, there's some promotional value to other smaller sports that you could probably get from ESPN that will help the SEC, and they care about it. They are thinking about this from a different perspective. But the point is the SEC can think about it from a different perspective because there's a lot of great brands within a certain region, so they can still stay the SEC. The Big Ten doesn't have that luxury. Is it true that that brand size should be more valuable than TV market size? Yes. There's a bubble here. There's a bubble that's going to pop. I don't know when. But the Big Ten's expansion moves were about the TV market size because that bubble still exists and they're cashing in on the bubble, and you can't blame them. And that bubble is this. Networks are paying more for schools based on the TV market size they're in rather than their brand size. So the Big Ten is cashing in on the stupidity of networks. Just to give you guys an example, USC played Utah in the Pac-12 title game. Utah, Salt Lake City had more people watching that game than Los Angeles. Not kidding you on that. By that logic, the TV markets should be irrelevant. But that's not how the networks are thinking. So to the networks, USC is still a more valuable brand. Now, they're in a bigger market, and just historically, traditionally, they are a more valuable brand. But Utah's bringing more viewers. Utah probably is a more valuable brand if you really look past that. But the Big Ten knows what the networks are thinking. That's the interesting part of the story, is the Big Ten is finessing the networks. The SEC has a better product overall, but it ain't that hard to sell the SEC product, guys. I'm sorry. Sometimes we give commissioners and leadership too much credit because they have something you can't screw up. I say this with the NFL all the time. Roger Goodell's not that great of a commissioner. Do you know how hard it is to not make the NFL successful? It's just a naturally amazing product. It's like selling oil. It's like having oil. Unless you're Jimmy Haslam, you can't really bankrupt yourself selling oil. Okay? So it's very easy to sell the NFL. It's very easy to sell the SEC. The Big Ten is a big time conference, but it's not on the SEC's level. So for them to have twice the value of the SEC, you got to give their leadership some credit. They are forward thinking with what they're doing. What this really says, though, is Tony Petitti is more innovative and forward thinking, and this leads to more of the nationalization of college football. We're probably closer and closer to just an organization of the two major conferences, the SEC and the Big Ten. We'll go to the message boards real quick. Mr. Jones, before you know it, the season will be 8 games long, and they'll have a 64-team bracket stretched out for 8 weeks. Mr. Jones, I really hope they don't do that. I'm praying they don't do that. I think a 12-team playoff still works because the regular season now matters. It still matters. You're still going for the bye or the home game on a campus, so there's a lot to play for, and it at least brings more teams into the fold. But yeah, I'm with you. I really hope they don't do that. Travis says, why would you not want the absolute best team to be the champion, though? Okay, Travis, that's a good question. I'm gonna tell you why. There's something in sports called the element of randomness, which is to say that on any given day, which sport has more randomness introduced into it? Baseball and hockey have the most. Baseball and hockey, the best team in the MLB, the best team in the NHL, the worst team in the MLB, the worst team in the NHL, randomness decides the outcome. I'd say it's about like 70% of the game, honestly, in just one game. That's why you have to play 162 games to really separate the teams. Basketball is a little bit less. It's a lot less random, actually. And when you have like a 7-game playoffs, like the NBA does, almost the best team wins it every time. Football is even less random, but because it's a 1-game playoff, there's more randomness in who wins it. If you have the best team winning it every year, you have no suspense because typically year in and year out, the best team is the same team. The college football playoff has not done college football any favors. It's done the SEC a lot of favors. It's not done college football any favors. It's become way too predictable who's going to be there. And it's also become way too predictable over who doesn't belong, which is leading to increased interest among the teams that know they could compete and less interest everywhere else. That's not a good formula. That's not a good formula at all. And I think that's a I think long term, that could be disastrous for the program. I mean, disastrous for the sport. Look, sport was at its best when Colorado and Georgia Tech shared a national title in 1990. Neither of those teams were close to the best team in college football that year. So what you want is, you don't want it totally random, where you don't want like a 3, 4, 5 loss team winning the title. What you like is the idea of a collection of a few elite teams, I don't know, 9, 10 maybe, and one of them could win it. And you also want the chance that maybe somebody that wasn't even in the top 25 to start the year could maybe sneak through and win it, as Oklahoma did in 2000. You're not seeing that much anymore. Mr. Jones says Big Ten is weak. You never know how good they actually are because they face no competition. The only reason the Big Ten wins is because they face cakewalk teams week after week, while the SEC beats up on each other all year, playing good teams. Goodell is Vince McMahon. Okay. Mr. Jones, you were right about the first two, but the point is that speaks to how well run the Big Ten is, that they can get a $7 billion deal while the SEC gets a $3 billion deal. You're right. The SEC is better in every way. It's a better product. You and I could sell the SEC. It's good on its own. There's not a lot of talent in selling the SEC as a product. There is some more talent in selling the Big Ten, and the Big Ten leadership is doing that. Mr. Jones, Goodell is Vince McMahon? No. Say whatever you want about Vince McMahon. He took wrestling international in the 80s. Goodell inherited something that was already at a certain level and has presided over its rise to a new level. Vince McMahon didn't preside over the rise of WWE, formerly WWF. He created it. Huge difference, guys. I want to thank you all for tuning in today. Again, we will be back on tomorrow. At this point, I do believe it'll be just me, unless something changes. Mr. Jones says NFL, WWE. I want to thank you guys all for tuning in. I know this was a little bit tricky. I want to thank Josh Ward for coming on. Please hit the like and subscribe button and hit that thumbs up and share with your friends if you can. We're still doing a lot of fun things, guys. We will be back on tomorrow. Oh, Mr. Jones, is that what your point is? They're both, sorry, I have to finish this before we go. They're both entertainment, not listed as competition. Okay, come on. There is actual competition in the NFL. It's not like everything is fixed. Okay, I get the conspiracies, but come on. It's not to that level. I get your point, though. Again, thank you guys all for tuning in. I'd like to thank all the commenters. You guys really helped make the show possible today. It would have been really awkward if I were just speaking to myself with no commenters and nobody joining in. So thanks again. Please hit that like and subscribe button. We greatly appreciate it. I'll be back on tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern time. That's 10 a.m. Eastern time. And we hope to have Dave back on Monday. You guys enjoy the rest of your day. Have a great one. With All the Hook Sports, this is Caleb Calhoun.